All right. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. My name is Jason Flame, and welcome to the Master Motivation Show. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest. Our guest is Sensei Joshua Smith, who is a third degree black belt certified by the American Karate Association under the direction of Marty Eubanks. He also holds black belts in Shotokan and American Freestyle martial arts. In addition, he is certified in the Marine Corps martial arts program, which is a system of real life functional hand-to-hand combat moves. With over 20 years of experience, he brings a mix of traditional Japanese martial arts and modern American sport karate to his teachings for a robust learning experience. Thanks for joining us today, and welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, super excited. And hey, congratulations on your success at the Compete International Karate Tournament this past weekend.
Yeah, thanks. Awesome. I had a great time.
It seemed, like I was telling you pre-interview, we went down and I got to see some friends compete. My friend Kevin Kowalczyk and his son Jet both did really, really well, and it was just fun to see everybody back competing in the tournament full. And quite honestly, it was great to see people without wearing masks and doing what we do in the martial arts. So it was an amazing weekend. I want to jump in right away with this first question, just because I think there's a lot to be learned from lessons of other people, things that other people have experienced. So I want to start with, what is the most challenging experience you have had in your life?
Yee. I think for the people who probably know me personally or even really follow me on social media, I'm pretty transparent in comparison to a lot of people. But my life is truly probably a testimony of overcoming adversity. And I share with people often that I, by no means, should ever have achieved any level of success, really in any realm. I probably should be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. And so, if I had to answer that and kind of summarize your question with an answer, it would, I grew up in pretty extreme poverty by American standards. And my dad left when I was a child, and my mom raised us as a single mom, 4 kids. And it was just really, quite a dysfunctional mess. I always joke, sort of, but all jokes aside, it was kind of like Jerry Springer, but we grew up in Kentucky, and I mean, it was a dysfunctional mess of an upbringing. So, ended up, I got addicted to drugs. Drugs and alcohol were really prevalent as a teenager in the neighborhoods we grew up in. We admired the drug dealers over the lawyers, and um, to this very day, like I have a sister who's homeless, one that's in prison, one that's estranged, and really I'm the only one that made it out. And I woke up one day and had just enough clarity. I was about 28 years old, and I would realize that I was on the losing end of that equation. And so I made a definitive decision at that very point that I was never going to use drugs or alcohol again. So I recently celebrated 12 years clean and sober in January.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So that single-handedly destroyed my life, and would also be the answer to your question of the biggest challenge that I had.
Yeah. Well, again, congratulations. That's an amazing feat. Having been in a family that, I've seen drug addiction, I've seen alcoholism, and, it can definitely change the course of your life, and, make changes in the choices that you make, and in the people that you surround yourself with, and just your overall belief in yourself, quite honestly. So tell me, what was it like growing up, without a dad? Your dad left you early. So what was it like not having a dad around, and who were your male role models?
Yeah, to elaborate on that a little bit, I was more about 12 years old, really, when he left altogether. But my parents had divorced when I was like 3. So, to be fair about it, I would say that I didn't grow up exactly without a man in my life. My dad was there. He was heavily distracted with a lot of personal stuff that he had going on, but he actually is the one who got me into martial arts. He had been a multi-school owner. He was a police officer back then. You didn't make money off of karate, but so he was a police officer by trade, and had 2 or 3 schools. I was real young at that point. I don't really recall, but um, so I did have some male role models within karate as well. my sensei, and I switched styles a couple times as a kid. I started in super traditional Shotokan karate, like that was really just all kata, with very little kumite, and they taught most of the class in Japanese words if they knew those words. And I transitioned over into like a more of a freestyle open martial arts around the age of 12 or 13, and got into doing more like tournament oriented martial arts.
Hey, and while we're chatting here, we got several listeners watching in. Guys, if you're watching us right now and you've got some questions or you just want to give a shout out to Josh, please drop those in the comments, and any questions I will read out, and we'll get that part of this interview today. Tell me a little bit more about your mom and how you have some pretty strong values and beliefs. That's my impression of you, and tell us a little bit more about that and how those beliefs, transformed your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, my mom, she raised us, and we were poor. She didn't have any, real education past like a GED or something, and had to work a lot, and I think I inherited my work ethic from her. Like, out of all the bad and the chaos and stuff, there's always a learning lesson with everything. And my takeaway from her is she worked 7 days a week. She worked in a factory like Monday through Friday, and she learned how to be a bookkeeper somehow, some way. And so she would go work for this auctioneer on Saturdays and keep his books. And on Sunday, she would work at a gas station. And I remember as a child, I was a little bit embarrassed, because my friends would be like, one, you live in a trailer park. Two, your mom works at the gas station. Oh, we saw your mom. And I remember being like, ah. But, as I got older, I was like, man, that's awesome. I mean, we were always one step away from being homeless, but she kept the lights on, and we had a little bit of food in the refrigerator, and she made it happen. And so, like, as an adult, you come to appreciate that. And it's kind of funny, the values and the things that you talk about. And for who all may be watching and don't know me or don't follow me, or maybe they do and they hate me and they're watching just to see what I'll say. But my mom did not give those to me. She actually is on the other side of the political realm, and we actually differ in a whole lot of our belief systems. So that did not come from her. I got into reading books a lot when I got my life together. When I got clean and sober, in true addict fashion, the pendulum swung from one side to the other. And I came to the realization that I knew nothing about politics, religion, money, investing. Really, I didn't know much about anything. I grew up, kind of what we would call today like a street kid, and so you are what you are most often because of where you grew up and what your parents were and all of that. But I decided that didn't necessarily have to be me. So I remember I got in an argument with this guy one day over the Bible, and he handed it to me. This dude was not a Christian. He was like the secret society and Illuminati type of beliefs and some, and I don't even know why I argued. I'm just the kind of guy sometimes that'll do that, especially if I'm bored. So he handed it to me. So I'm like, I realized that later that night. I'm like, why did I argue with this guy? And he made me look like a fool. And like, I don't even go to church, and I've never even read the Bible. And why in the world was I arguing? So anyhow, I went and got a Bible, and I read it from cover to cover over the course of the next year. And so I, was able to sort of see that. And the same thing, one day I woke up and realized I didn't know the difference, not really, between like a Democrat and a Republican. And my mom said she was a Democrat, but that's not uncommon in real poor neighborhoods where people aren't government assistance and stuff of that nature. And so someone gave me a book called Atlas Shrugged in 1984 and several other books. It just went on and on and on. So when, I woke up one day, I was, so I shaped some beliefs there. And same, when personal development and investing, I think my first couple of books were Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And side note, my black belts in my school have to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad to get their black belt. But there were some defining moments in my life. And, I have opinions, and some of them are probably just flying out my mouth sometimes. But a lot of times, I would like to consider myself pretty well read in comparison to the average person walking around. So it's not that I'm just firing from the hips all the time. I'm usually I've read at least 10 to 100 books on that particular subject.
So it was all through educating yourself that kind of changed your views and changed kind of your thoughts on what was the norm of what was going on around you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and you sort of, alluded earlier to mentors. I did not have a good business model set up through my parents. We were poor, and no one ever talked to me about marriage or money or investing. I didn't even know anyone that had money or credit or, anything. So I didn't have any like preconceived ideas that were healthy, and no one had these conversations with kids like me, especially not within my family. And so I barely graduated high school. We in my family, we didn't even really have to go to school. If you didn't want to, you went or you didn't or whatever. And, there was really no plans for us in our future and what that looked like. And so I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. And that's probably why they even let me graduate high school. They knew I was going to go on to the military. So I got out, but and I don't think it's like a matter of intelligence or anything. I just didn't really have like any formal education to speak of. And I did have enough self-awareness though to realize that. And so I'm like, I better start reading some books. And so I did. At this point, I found some mentors, some male mentors in my life, and was real transparent and, kind of where I'd been and what had happened in my life and the direction that I wanted to head into. And my first mentor was actually a priest. And it was funny, on my first meeting, I'm like, look, dude, I'm not going to go to church service. And he's like, that's okay. And so he took an interest. He knew my whole life story and the mess that I'd made of my life. And he went and bought me he found out I never read any of the kids' classic books like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and all of these. So I remember he went and he bought like all these book series and he gave them to me, and I read every single one of them. And then he got real slick. He'd start slipping me like spiritual books too, like on the side, because he just knew I'd read them and like either try to disagree with them or agree with them or whatever and give him feedback. So this relationship cultivated over the period of some years. And he'd been a former banker at one point. He had been a military chaplain. And so, I mean, we had a lot of good stuff, and he'd give me money lessons all the time. Like he taught me about the amortization on a loan. I'd never heard that word before. And, how many times you're paying for a house when you buy it. And just, I mean, we'd have like the best talks and the best lectures. And, so, it was really just instrumental those first couple of years of getting sober. And I was soaking up knowledge and reading books and having great conversation. And one of those relationships, like that mentorship, led to another. And I'd get more courage to approach the next person. And I got into goal setting and writing goals down with deadlines and plans. And I mean, I really, it was a lot of luck, but a lot of willingness at the same time, and just getting all those things to happen.
Now, you talked about it several times, the fact that you grew up poor, the fact that you got into drugs and alcohol and addiction. What was the defining moment that pulled you out? What was it that said, this is it, I'm changing my life, I'm going in a different direction?
Yeah. So, I go to recovery meetings and for sobriety, and I share this story often. So I was on the losing end of this every single way imaginable, from having financial problems to credit problems to relationship problems to legal problems to no driver's license problems to, so the writing was on the wall. So any normal person would look at that and say, oh my gosh, but an addict goes to the bitter end, to the end of it, and some all the way to death, of course. But I like to win. I'm a karate competitor. I've been I like to be on the winning end of things. But to really answer your question, for anyone who may be watching who either has shared these problems or has a family member, we all probably have family members in some capacity with these issues. Well, drugs and alcohol help you get through rough times. They heal the pain. At one point in your life, it's kind of like the solution, but then it stops doing for you what it used to do for you. The honeymoon phase is over, when you're a teenager in your young 20s, and you can go party and have fun. And then it turns into a nightmare. And every time you do it, all you get are the bad side effects. It's not healing the pain, it's causing the pain. And then you think, oh, I need to do more of this to numb this. And then it's like more bad stuff, paranoia, misery, it psychologically is not doing the trick anymore. So it's like you're stuck between this hard, like a rock and a hard place where you're addicted. You can't stop. It doesn't bring you the happiness. It's not the solution, you know. And so it's just this whirlwind of emotions. And, you know, I didn't know, I didn't know if I could quit, you know, for sure, but I was willing to do everything I had to do to leave it alone and to move forward. And I'm an all or nothing person, so it wasn't like a phase out or something. You know, some people, like, it was just a clear cut. I remember I got on the phone with this girl that was my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "Look," I said, "I know you probably don't believe this." I said, "This is my last day doing this stuff." I said, I'm done, you know, and it, sure enough, it was. So, you know, it has, I'm giving you a brief overview, and, you know, it's, there's been some hard things happen in my life. And, you know, it wasn't just oh, I'm done, I'll walk in the park, but I did stop, and I stopped, and relapse has not been a part of that story. I 100% stopped that day and moved on.
Well, good for you. And once again, congratulations, because that's a really hard thing to do. So congratulations. You
Yes,
talked
sir.
about going into the military. What, and I always appreciate those that have served. I never served. I often get asked if I served in the military, if I'm in law enforcement, and I'm not, never have. But I so appreciate people that have served. What was your reason for going into the military, and what did you get out of the military?
Oh man. So my dad had been a Marine, and his dad. So I'm a third generation Marine, and my mom had 5 brothers. She was the only girl, and every one of them served in the military. A couple did not go to the Marine Corps. One was like Army, one's Navy. I think 3 Marines or something. You know, as far as like the breakdown. But I come from through my dad's lineage. You know, we've served in the American military all the way back like pre-Civil War time. So I had a great grandpa that like fought for the Confederate States of America, and like, you know, we've traced this back like to see, you know, all the different men that have been here since the beginning of America through my family. So I very much knew, like, my whole life. Some people don't really know like what their purpose and where they're going, but I remember as like a super young boy, like I was always in my mind going to go to the Marine Corps. So it was just something I always knew that I wanted to do. And you had asked, like, you know, what I took away from that. So, you know, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I found a letter recently that I had written to my mom from boot camp, and I was like, sound like a little wimp, you know. I was like, "Mom, they're so mean to me. This is hard," you know. Like, I was like sitting here laughing at myself, like all these years later reading this, but they had scared me. I was 17 years old. You know, I turned 18 at boot camp, and it was a difficult deal there, especially those first couple of weeks. But you get used to it, you know, and went on. I was actually a pretty good Marine. I mean, not like to toot my own horn, but like I could run fast, jump. I'm real physical, pull ups, shoot rifles. You know, I'm very meticulous, attention to detail. A lot of that stuff was already there, like pre-Marine Corps, anyhow. So it really fit right into my lifestyle. However, as I've already shared in this episode, like, you know, I struggled with substance abuse in the Marine Corps, and that lifestyle at some point didn't mesh real well. So otherwise, I probably would have stayed in, you know, for 20 or 30 years. But the to kind of correlate like where I'm at today in my life, and people sometimes will ask, you know, about like a key to success in business. And as you all know, I guess, or maybe you don't, but I'll mention it now. I own 4 martial arts franchises called Premier Martial Arts, and people will say, "Oh, well, like, what's the key to your success?" And I tell people, well, you know, I'm a good Marine, even in business. Franchising, they tell you like kind of like what colors to paint the wall, what pictures to hang. You log in, you can see like what lesson plan you're supposed to teach, how to sign someone up, what you're supposed to say, how you're supposed to say it, show them the schedule, the order of operations, like boom, 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 boom. So you don't have to overthink the process. So that is very much Marine Corps. They will tell you everything from where to be, how to stand, what you're supposed to say, what not to say. Like, be on time, be consistent, don't overthink the process, keep it simple, stupid. You know, like, they have an acronym for everything. And a lot of times that's really not that different from business, although we think like there's this high level of like this mystic entrepreneur. And I'm sure those people exist. It's not me. I'm a pretty simple-minded dude, but I know how to wake up at the same exact time every single day and keep schedule and routine and be structured and organized. And, so honestly, I'm not anything special. I'm just highly consistent and disciplined.
For sure. Well, consistency is definitely one of the keys to success, and probably the most important. Let's talk about martial arts a little bit more. So, your dad got you into martial arts at 12, and you said you started in Shotokan karate. What did you do along the way, and when did you start getting into competition?
Yeah, for sure. So just a quick correction. He got me into it. I was probably like 5 or 6.
Oh, okay.
Traditional Shotokan, and that I kind of transitioned over into like more of a freestyle martial arts around the age of 12. So I started really young. I would watch my dad train some, and my first movie I ever watched was The Karate Kid. And so naturally, my dad signed me up in traditional like Shotokan because that had been his. He was a Wado, Ryu, Shotokan, like very traditional guy. Back then, really, that's what was most prevalent, anyways. Were the traditional styles of martial arts, Kempo, Taekwondo, whatever. But and I stuck with it, and I liked it. But we had this guy come through named Clint Darden, and he was getting like his 5th black belt. He was a little older than me, and I don't really know why he showed up to do the Shotokan thing, like because he was a very much like an American freestyle karate competitive guy, but he was just racking up accolades, I guess, to come get a black belt. So they sort of fast tracked him, and because he was like way better, probably like even better. No, probably he was even better than our instructors. He was like miles ahead of them on skill. So he had left after he got his black belt, and he started his own little school. And it was really probably more like a club because there were really only like 10 guys there. And so I asked my dad, I'm like, begging him practically. I'm like, hey, let me go over and train with Clint. And so I think the deal, if my memory serves me correctly, is I sort of had to transition. Like I still had to do the Shotokan thing, but like that was like Tuesday, Thursday or something. But Monday, Wednesday, I could go do the American freestyle. And that didn't last too long. I let go of the Shotokan, went over to the American freestyle thing. And we were in West Kentucky, although I live in Nashville, Tennessee now. But at the time, we were living in West Kentucky. And so on Wednesday night, so at Clint's school, we would drive over to Bowling Green, which was where Master Ken Eubanks, as many of you all listening, may know him. He's kind of a legend in our game, was the founder of the Bluegrass Nationals karate tournament. And that Wednesdays were their fight nights. So we would go over there and we would train, even though it was like a couple hour drive, and, we would get in. And back then this dude probably had like 85 fighters. And I mean, they were all good to this day, no one's probably produced more world champions under one roof at one time than what Ken Eubanks did back in the 80s and 90s. Brian Ruth, Marty, the list goes on and on. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but this dude probably had like 8 world champions there at one time that were active on the NASCA circuit. And so although I was a black belt in Shotokan, I pretty much sucked at sparring. So there was a huge learning curve there. So got in with those guys, and we would train all the time, and just have the time of my life, man. So I absolutely loved the tournament scene. We didn't have much money. Like I said, my dad left early on there, and around 12 years old or so. My mom didn't have much money for tournaments, so I didn't really get to get out on the tournament scene quite like I would have liked to.
And what is it that got you into competition? What makes you enjoy the competition so much, and what helped you become a better fighter?
So I'm like the most competitive human on earth. My dad tells stories that like when I was a little kid, we had a ping pong table, and he would have to actually eventually let me win a game in order for us just to quit playing so he could move on or go to bed or whatever. Because in my mentality, like I couldn't stop something until I won. That would even be like above martial arts. That kind of transcends into all areas of my life. Like I don't even like let my wife beat me driving, like if we're following each other somewhere. But to answer the second part of your question, you asked like what helped me to be a better fighter. So just a lot of sparring and doing a lot of tournaments, getting with the right people. And, not that you asked in this question, but if any of our listeners and people advice I would give is don't get so loyal to your instructor and to your school and your federation. If skill and desire on a true level are something that you desire and want to have, first you got to be honest enough. Like, do you suck? Does your school suck? Or are you just dojo? Because that can be a wacky brain process if we don't know any better and we haven't had exposure to like what a real school or a real tournament and just having self honesty and being able to self evaluate is a difficult thing for a lot of people, no matter what, anyways, especially in martial arts, because we're not humble enough to be like, I'm not that good, but I really was not that good. And going to Eubanks' school on Wednesday proved it. Although I was a black belt, I think he had like yellow belts that could wipe the floor with me. So it was pretty clear that I was not that good. So I had to train and go where the good guys were and let them beat up on me until I could finally. I'd set like little micro goals. I'm like, okay, when I go to the school, I'm going to try to score on Gene one time tonight. If I can just hit him once, it'll be a victory.
Right.
Start there and sort of work forward.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that is pretty common in martial arts schools in general. I've seen it where students are not challenged enough, in their home school, that it's time to branch out. It's time to go visit the other schools, and like the saying goes, if you want to be the best, you have to train with the best. So sometimes sticking in your own school isn't going to help you grow the way you want to, if that's your goal, right? To be a high level competitor, to be a world champion, to get to that next level. So I agree with that. And I know that in my early years of being an instructor, and I think a lot of people felt the same way, as you would feel slighted, or you would feel dishonored, or whatever, disrespected, that, if your student wanted to go train somewhere else. But, if you really put the priority of your students becoming the best version of themselves, if you're not able to provide that, it's time to let them move on. Or if anything else, go to that other school and bring some talent back to help make the rest of the school get better. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think that we should look at a little bit more too.
For sure, absolutely. And just a side note, the majority of us in this industry are not training NASCAR world champions. So if you look at it like in the grand scheme of things, like you lost one student because he needed to go compete, it's not, that's not a money, like, well, 150, but it's not a big deal. Wish the dude the best, be his friend, be an ally, support him, clap for him. Because at some point, your student, if he's that great, he's going to outgrow you and your school, because schools aren't designed to groom them. All the guys back when I was running the circuit all the time, they weren't really affiliated necessarily with a one school. They would train like Tuesday at Tony Young's, Monday at Marcel as I'm using Atlanta right now because I used to go down there and train, but you would hit like a different school each night. And the same fighters that were with you on Monday would now be at the next school on Tuesday because that was their fight night. And no one really paid tuition or belonged to any certain school. And most fighters don't even wear rank belts or anything. It's a different deal. So we don't build our businesses on that.
Right. No, definitely. And I remember, coming up the ranks as a student in my schools, we would have these, we would call them traveling fight nights. And we would take all our students to one school and fight with them. And then they'd bring all their students over to another school. And it was a lot of fun too, because, the camaraderie of that, builds, within organizations too. So speaking about organizations, you touched on it, Premier Martial Arts, you're part of their franchise. What made you decide to do that, versus being, your own independent school?
Yeah. So, and I know for time's sake, I won't hijack this and tell a super long story, but I did start off as a independent owner, and if it's okay, I'm going to give the brief story because it's kind of neat. So growing up, my mom would always say, Josh, you should start your own karate school. Now getting into my adult life, she'd say the same thing. If I was crashing, one thing, not really knowing what I was going to do, she's like, you should start your own karate school. And I'm like, Mom, nobody has ever made any money teaching karate before. Do you know anyone who made any money? No, I don't. Like, what in the world would I do that for? And so anyways, one day I was selling heating and air conditioning equipment. This is my late 20s. I'd mentioned I got clean and sober, had my life together. I look across the street, I'm on my telephone, and this martial arts studio that had been there, like it had changed hands like 30 times, like over the period of 30 years, like all these different, it was always a martial arts school, but every 2 years, like a new owner, a new guy, right? And it was in a terrible part of town, right next, like literally on the bad side of the railroad tracks. There was an illegal gambling hall where they sold drugs next door to it. And there would be prostitutes walking through the parking lot sometimes. And And so the place came open. It was open. It was for rent. And I'm on my phone. And I'm like, not that I hated my job or anything, but like, I'm like, I don't know. It just hit me at that moment. I'm like, I'm going to rent that building. I'm going to open a karate school. So I call the guy up. I rent the karate school. It's like $250 a month. Like, I'm not making that up. I mean, dirt cheap. It was a like nasty, bad place. And I didn't have any money or any credit. Like I'd already mentioned about a dozen times so far, I destroyed my money to credit. Like I had nothing going for me really, except for I had a dream, you know, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. So I had to get a friend to co-sign, a good friend of mine who had also became like a mentor in my life, for $4,500 to go to the bank. And he could have gave it to me, but he said he wanted me to have to go through this process to help, you know, have some money invested or jump through some hoops and do it. So I borrowed the $4,500 from the bank and opened up this dojo. All it bought me was some mats, and I went to like some yard sale and bought some like bags and miscellaneous things. Nothing matched. It wasn't real fancy. And we slapped some paint on the walls that were like lime electric green because that was my favorite color. And I opened it up. And, you know, my first day, nobody showed up. And I went home and I told my wife, I was like, oh, no one showed up today. You know, like, so the second day I went to eat lunch. The second day I opened, I'd eaten at this Mexican restaurant. And my waiter said he had like 6 kids or something. So I gave them passes. And I'm like, guys, please just come. You don't have to pay anything, you know? So that guy brought his like 6 kids. So on the second night, I had like a free family. They didn't sign up, but I at least had someone on the mats. And anyhow, like I said, I'll move quickly through the story, but one thing led to another. I finally got some students. There was a huge learning curve. I knew martial arts, but I did not know the business of martial arts. I set the goal that the first month I made more money teaching karate than I did selling heating and air conditioning equipment, that I was going to walk in and quit. So that took a good year and a half. I remember looking down one day and I'd made like $5,000 at my martial arts school, and that was more than I was making at my regular day job. So I walked in and I told my boss I quit, and he was an entrepreneur. You know, he was super proud. He was a young guy about my age, and he was like, okay, cool, you know, no problem. And so I remember I went and got on the phone and I called my mom. Now, keep in mind, I'm like 30 years old or something, you know, I mean, not that my mom had any bearing on my life or decisions at this point, but I wanted her to be proud. I'm like, hey, Mom, I just want you to know I quit my job, and I thought she would be proud, you know. And she's like, what in the world are you thinking? You quit your job. That's steady income. Like, to go do this karate thing that's your hobby. What are you thinking? That's high risk. It's dangerous. And I'm like, yeah. It is, but it's going to be okay, you know. And so one thing that led to another. I moved out of the illegal gambling hall drug dealer shopping plaza, and I moved into the back of a tanning salon that was like $400 or $500 a month. This huge room they had on the back space of this tanning salon. I had no signage out front. You had to walk all the way into the tanning salon, down the back of this hallway, and then you would find this huge vacant room that was open, 3,000 square feet, and they were going to rent it to me very cheap. And so I got that place. I was up to about 150 students. This is back in the day when Mike Perella and the 6-week paid trials for $69 and FCOM websites and Facebook ads and all of that stuff used to work really well for like $400 a month, you know, back in the good days. So I had learned basics about it, and I was going to the martial arts super show every July, you know, in Vegas. I guess that was July, and was taking notes and absorbing all that information. I remember it was mind blowing. And at the super show, I had met Mike and Julia Franzen out of like the Lexington, Cincinnati area, and they were husband and wife, and they offered to like consult me as a mentor. And they called me. This is after the super show. I met them there at the super show, and they were like, look, like, we'll help you for $100 a month. You can call us like every week or whatever. And I remember I'm like, well, let me talk to my wife. This is a big decision. Like, I'm not sure. Like, the $100 a month, you know, I have to think about this. So I thought about it, called them back the next day, and I'm like, okay, I'm in. So they were like my first consultants, you know, and they would help me out, and I took the information and would implement. And so I ended up with about 150 students, and everything's good. And I get a call one day from my friend Aaron Hensley, who's also in the Premier organization. I've been there kind of since, you know, close to the beginning, and owns a ton of schools now at this point. And he's like, look, dude, you're doing pretty good, but I think you could probably do a lot better. You should come take a look at the Premier organization. And so, dude, you know, just being at the right time, at the right place, knowing the right people, willing to take a jump and take actions. And, On a side note, if I can press pause on that story real quick, I think one of the things like serendipitous about growing up in the lifestyle I grew up in is I had nothing to lose and very little fear. Like I was able just to make split second decisions and go all in on a lot of things a lot of times because I grew up with nothing. And I thought, what the heck, man? Like, what do I have to lose here? So I've always just been able to bam, 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 just move forward with that because I never knew what comfort felt like anyhow. And so, anyways, back to the story. The next weekend, I'm going to Knoxville, Tennessee to the Premier franchise headquarters. And I met Barry Vanover, Miles Baker, all the Premier guys. And I was like, dang, man, this is legitimate. Circling back to when I said nobody made money in martial arts, these guys were making some money. I mean, like, as far as our industry goes, man, like the Premier guys, those top 10, 20 movers are all making six figures, and I'm like, they're getting money. Not too many people in any martial arts organization as a whole are making this kind of money. And it wasn't some bluff. These dudes were really doing it. They were sharp guys, younger, kind of the cool, hit, trendy, medium preppy guys. So I thought I kind of meshed well with me, my personality, and all of those things. But there was only one problem. I still didn't really have any money, credit, or anything. And if you've ever talked to Barry Vanover, that's a hard dude to sell on, So anyways, I won't give all the details of our conversation, but and I'm like, sir, I really want it, and this goes back and forth. And so some things happened and he agreed to let me in, even given the fact that I didn't really have any of the qualifications to get in. We worked it out. And so the rest is history, man. So I got in, once again, got under some good leadership, followed the systems, set a goal, that like I needed to hit some benchmarks before I got into doing the multi-school ownership thing.
Yeah, and that's something that is another topic altogether, right? Is that being a successful school owner and then going into the realm of multi schools. What was your decision based on, and why did you want to have more than one school?
Because more is always better, right?
Maybe.
That's always that mindset's actually what's gotten me in trouble most of my life, because I never knew when enough was enough. But so that's very much my personality, though. Like, I like super fast cars, super fast motorcycles. If one of something's good, 100's bound to be better. So that was the thing. But I knew early on, I set the goal. I'm like, hey, I want to have 3 schools. And I don't really know why, but it sounded better than 1. So I chose 3. And then when I got to 3, I'm like, well, let's do 5. And now I'm at 4 and I'm like, I don't know if 5's gonna, but anyways, it's always a sliding scale. You always need something to work towards. But I also knew, to give a more specific answer on what you're asking, in our industry or in any industry, people lie a lot. I'm not saying that people are always lying, but they'll always talk about your why, and it needs to be this holistic thing. Like, it's to help. There's nothing wrong with helping people. Anyone that follows me knows that I do a ton of mission work and help people. I tithe at a church. Like, that's no bull crap. Like, I'm all about giving stuff. But let's just be honest. I wanted more money. I wanted a lifestyle. I grew up poor. I wanted to know what multiple 6-figure streams of income felt like going in my bank account. And that's why I did it.
Right. And you hit on something just a few minutes ago, where you talked about, you just kind of met the right people. It was the right timing. It just kind of fell together. But it doesn't really just fall together. There were things that were happening in your thought process that led you to search out those people and to get to know these people and to understand, that lifestyle. I was fortunate. I got sort of like going to the Super Show. You meet just a ton of really great people. I had some. I have great mentors in Frank Silverman, Mike Metzger, Robbie Beard. Those are like my 3 guys that always help me kind of reach that next level, because when I was starting out, I thought I was doing pretty good, and then you go and you see, whoa, this can be a whole lot bigger.
Yeah.
And it just changes. It just kind of opens up. Your goals totally change, like you said, as a sliding scale. You get to 4 and you're like, well, maybe 5's not enough. You get to 5, maybe we go to 10. But what helps you as a business owner keep all this together and keep time for your family and keep time for yourself to keep reading and training and everything else? How do you manage it all?
Well, so I have just an amazing team. You hear the cliche thing about it takes teamwork to make the dream work, and it absolutely does. Your very first question on the interview today was what was my number one struggle in my personal life, but my number one struggle in my professional life has been team building. In the beginning, just running a successful business as a one-man show is hard enough, but as you grow and scale, you have to have a team. And I sucked at hiring, sucked at firing, I sucked at counseling, staff evaluations, staff meetings. I mean, systems. I mean, the list went on and on, right? So I had to like get honest about those things, learn those things, read books about those things, videos, podcasts, mentors, seminars. The list goes on and on. And but to really take something full blown to that next level, you've got to train, hold accountable, and empower other people to help you. Delegate as much as humanly possible and outsource it because you're only one person. And so only do the things that only you can do. And there's only very few things that only you can do. So it's arrogant to think like, oh, I have to do all these things. No, I can outsource and delegate and pay someone to do almost everything. But you have to have the right people. And so they have to be trained. They have to know what your expectations are. They have to know that you're going to come back and inspect to make sure it, is to that level of what you're wanting. So, I have some really, really amazing players on my team. I mean, people that are probably, no, let me take the word probably back. They are better at doing things than I am. I'm just good at finding them and making sure they know what I want. And so the other parts to what you asked, though, is you've got to be extremely organized. I keep a phone reminder like 2 weeks out, day by day, a playbook of what each day entails, what it looks like down to the minute, what's happening. I plan my work schedules out for 2 months at a time, kind of what's happening as far as events. So everything has its place in time. The third part to your question was something about family and time. Now, if I had to say anything that's lacking as an entrepreneur, I'm all about transparency and keeping it real. That area suffers, man, because I am working all the time, 7 days a week, 365 days, even on vacation. It's a rarity that some days, on vacation, maybe I only plug in for an hour or something, but your phone's still, your emails, like that's always so ever present. And any entrepreneurs that are here or listening right now know that. Like, you might be unplugged and be halfway across the world, literally, because I've traveled the world extensively for you all that follow me, but you're still working it to some capacity, and something's got to give, But fortunately, I have a wife that's understanding. She's on board. She's on Team Josh. She's my biggest fan, supporter, pushes me. My children do karate. They go to karate tournaments with me. So and I train for fun. Like some people go golfing. I'm a karate guy. Like I ride motorcycles. I like sport bikes, and I like to spar. And so when I've got any ounce of free time, you'll find me doing one of those two things.
Well, you brought up the fact that your kids are training, which is super cool. What's it like, being the dad and being the instructor at the same time?
So just this year, I started outsourcing his training because it was getting pushed on the back burner because I'm busy all the time. But we had a group of Venezuelans. Any of y'all that follow sport karate know the Venezuelans are super tough. Well, a little group of them moved to Nashville, where I live, and they started training at my school, like off schedule. They got a key to the place, and they're hanging out up there training all the time at night, after hours. And so I got to where I'm playing with them, which kind of got me back out running the circuit again this year because I'm back out training with these guys. And of course, they all beat me up real bad, but they're all real good. And so I've got them sort of training and taking control of training my son for his tournament. So my son goes to regular classes under the other instructors. I don't teach very many classes anymore, but I've kind of outsourced his training. I'm 40, so I'm kind of old school in the fighter game, compared to what these 20-year-olds are doing. So I've got him some younger trainers that are kind of bringing up the new game, where they do the body jabs and stuff that we didn't do back in the day.
Right. Yeah, I was watching when I told you I was at compete, and it just the little bit of the rules. I still in my mind belong to the 5-point system, and
Five
that
by
kind of
ones.
thing.
Five by
Huh?
ones. Five
Right?
by ones.
Yeah. So, but that's cool. That's awesome. Tell me, because you brought it up. You've traveled the world, and I had noticed several times when you're out traveling or when you're in other countries, one particular picture or post that I remember is you were in a small village doing some boxing and kickboxing with the people that live there. Talk about that a little bit, and when was the first time that you did something like that?
Well, so going back several years, I would travel. I went to the Dominican Republic. I got kind of a link in on someone told me like, hey, um, there's this karate club thing like happening in this village. Some American people, or it's actually a cigar company, Fuentes Cigars in the Dominican. And this guy has a school and he helps the villagers that work in the tobacco fields making these real high-end cigars. And some American guy, actually his name's Tony, out in California. Tony got a tournament. Anyways, he started the karate thing there. I think, but anyway, so I went unrelated to him, but I'm down in this village. They've got a karate school. I go down there, spend the week. I'm working with them, with the kids and everything. And it sort of just put it on my mind. I'm like, man, there's like a real need for the martial arts, not in the capacity of money like we do in America, or probably not even necessarily for competition, but just for these people to have an outlet. Like a lot of the kids play soccer in a lot of foreign countries, but martial arts is not nearly as big, especially like in third world countries. But I mean, there is some, they're familiar with it. They have an idea of what it is. They usually have, I've like heard of Bruce Lee or maybe know the Karate Kid movie or something like that, So,
Right.
I started every time I traveled to a country, I would go find like a kickboxing gym or a karate gym or something and just check it out. It was always, I'm a karate nerd, that's what I love to do. So some people go to the beach, which I do that as well, but I always go find a karate dojo, some sort of kickboxing gym. And so one thing led to another. I'm working with people when I go places for like vacation, but then I started working with the country of Haiti a few years ago. And I'm sitting there in Haiti and I bought all these foam nunchucks and these premier t-shirts and stuff. And I go to this orphanage and they're all speaking French Creole, not a word of English. And they're, a lot of missionaries are like Christian doing this religious thing. Like I'm not a preacher. So I'm sitting there though. And I remember praying, I prayed to God, like, I'm like, God, what in the world am I doing here in Haiti? Like, what am I going to do with these kids? Like, this is a different level of poor too. This is like more poor than the Dominican ever thought of being, although it's the same piece of land. We're talking like one of the poorest countries on earth is Haiti. And I'm sitting here at this orphanage and I'm just like tears coming to my eyes. I'm like, what in the freaking world am I doing in this place? My American, it's just, and I'm like, man, I don't even know like what I'm going to do here. Like they're needing more than karate. They're needing food. They're needing God. They're needing a lot of things that I can't give them. But I'm like, and then it hit me like this epiphany. And I'm like, I'm not saying God told me, but I mean, maybe, something happened in my mind. I'm like, dude, karate is your gift. Go do karate. I picked up the foam nunchucks. I walked over there, put them in the kids' hands, started spinning them, and I don't even know if they like knew what it was. But next thing you know, I've got like 20 kids in this orphanage all doing foam nunchuck drills with me and spinning them. I pull out the mitts. I brought the focus mitts and like the double kick paddle and everything. Before you know it, dude, I had them doing jumping front kicks, jab, cross, hook, rear leg round kicks, popping them, and like teaching form. And we don't speak a word of the same language, But then I spent all week with these kids and teaching them karate every single day because it was the only like common ground that I had. Like it was the only gift I had to give them. But like the relationships and the bonds that were forged that week from teaching karate to these kids in this orphanage, like, man, it gives me chills even like telling this story right now, just of the connection that it had. So at that point on, I knew that karate was in fact my gift. And it's as powerful of a gift as any gift on this earth that any man would be given. So, it's anywhere I go. And I just got back from Africa. You might've seen that a couple of months ago. I went and worked with like a security team there in Africa that actually fight like in Uganda, northern Uganda, like South Sudan and the Congo area. And so I got to work with a whole security team. I'm a former Marine. So like we did weapons defense and takeaway, and we put on pads and did boxing, kickboxing stuff, So I've really just had an amazing time getting to travel the world and do martial arts in the capacity of helping people really.
Yeah, to me that's just so it's so fascinating that you've been kind of given that opportunity, and I agree with you 100% that I mean martial arts is an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift to give to someone, uh, regardless of language or male, female, age. Like it doesn't matter because there's something for everybody to benefit from, and something like you said. You're a karate guy. You enjoy that's your hobby, but it also helps you make a living as well, which
Yeah.
it got the best of both worlds for sure. Well, we're getting a little bit close to the end. I know you got a staff meeting today that's super important, so I just want to finish with a couple maybe quick questions ish. Let's talk about what's next for Josh Smith. What's your future plans in the next 1 year, 5 year, 10 years?
Well, so one of my goals that I have set, like I want to be a millionaire. There's probably only a handful or a couple of handfuls within our industry that have made their money off of the martial arts school. So, investing first, I had to build my income up, and so I'm really working on that, trying to get some debt paid down from opening so many schools so quickly. You can rack up a little bit of debt there, but I want to become a millionaire. I want to open at least one more school to have a nice number of 5 there. And then I'm always sort of open that if any schools in my area, the Nashville area, maybe aren't doing well or whatever, that I can pick up and inherit a couple more there. So I'm open to that idea. But my focus is really on family over the next couple of years, trying to really plug in there, as well as travel. That's a huge thing to me. It cannot be all work and no play, although there's a lot of work, but I'm really all about opening up my mind and spirit and everything to through the way of travel and food, and sometimes crazy foods, like this. I ate some bugs over the weekend. I was out in California, but they sold bugs on the side of the street. Like someone had these like dried bugs. Anyways, enough on that. But I just I've got some financial goals as well, like some very specific numbers that I'm trying to make. And I am so laser focused on getting that, hitting those numbers and having my team on board for that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll let this be the last question because it could be a long answer. People are watching you, on social media. People are watching this video and they're learning a little bit about you. But if you could leave everybody just your final message, what would that message be to people, whether they're a martial artist, an entrepreneur, or I mean, who knows? You might get a young person that watches this and they're going to take away something. So what's your final message?
Yeah, so that's a broad question. I'll try not to take all day with it. I think in life, we grow up and there's a little cliche saying about having your cake and eating it too. And what it really means, you can't do that and you're not supposed to do that. Well, as I mentioned, I traveled the world extensively. I grew up very poor. I had a very bad start in childhood. If you're in America, especially if you were born in America, but even if you weren't born in America and you are here in America, you have already won the lottery, my friends. You can have your cake and eat it too. The martial arts tenets about mind, body, spirit, health, and wealth, and all of these things, you can have all of those things. I think sometimes we think something's got to give. Well, not necessarily. You have to have a box for each thing and decide, what are those 5 boxes going to be or whatever, and is it personal development? Yes. Am I going to work out every day? Yes. Am I going to save money, invest? Yes. Am I going to have a good family? Yes. Am I going to travel? Yes. Am I going to have businesses and freedom of time? Yes. Why does any of those things have to be a no? Like, who told you that? It does not have to. You don't have to be 300 pounds and say, well, I don't have time. No, you can do all of these things if you put your mind to it, and you get to decide the trajectory of your life. I grew up in an environment where people did not believe that. They think that the hand that got dealt to you is the hand that you die with. And only people that got wealthy were people that had daddy's money or they won the lottery, because we didn't like rich people. We hated those people. They were snobs and they were rude. It was, and that is all bullcrap. You are the designer and the artist of your life. Now, where most people fall short is they start lying because they're not disciplined enough, not consistent enough. They didn't write, they have dreams, but they didn't even bother to write the goal down. So it's not specific to them. So there's no wonder that they didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. But if you really, really want it and you write it down, formulate a game plan to make it happen, stay consistent, reevaluate it all the time. Every year, check in, see where you're at on that goal, reevaluate, reset, raise the bar, find the right people, the mentors, read the books, go to the seminar, watch the video, boom, 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 boom. You keep working and inching towards it. There is nothing, I'm convinced there's nothing that you can't achieve. So that would be my message. Just, I guess that's kind of like one of these like positive things, but it's the truth, man. I'm living proof that you can go from the trailer park in America and never supposed to be nothing to, painting a pretty nice life for yourself.
Well, that's a great way to finish this interview today. And what I really appreciate is just the passion in which you speak to those listening. You can tell that this is on your mind a lot, and you can tell that this is something that you live and something that you mentor other people with. So your team is lucky to have you, and I really enjoyed our time getting to know each other a little bit better over this last hour. And I look forward to watching you do more great things in the future. And I'll share this video with you so you can share it with others. And who knows, maybe connect with the we're usually one connection away from making a really good choice. So let's see what happens with it. But thanks again for being on the show today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, guys, tune in every Monday. We're here at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm here in California and have some amazing guests coming up. Follow us on Master Jason Flame on Facebook and our YouTube channel as well. You'll see at the bottom, scrolling across all the links that you can follow us and check it out. But thanks again, Josh, for being on the show, and I'll catch up with you at a tournament sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Have a good day.
All right, thanks. Take care. All right, guys, have a great one. We'll see you soon.